The restaurant was too quiet for a Friday night. Soft piano music floated through the air, expensive enough to feel deliberate, like it was chosen to impress someone important. Crystal glasses stood untouched. A single candle burned at the center of a table reserved under the name Mr. Alexander Knight. Alexander checked his watch for the third time. 10 minutes late. He hated lateness. He hated wasted time even more. Alexander Knight, CEO of Knight Global Holdings, was a man who controlled billion-pound deals with a single look. Cold. Calculated. Unreachable. His presence alone made boardrooms fall silent. Yet here he was, sitting alone at a blind date he hadn't even wanted. His mother's idea, of course. Just one dinner, Alex, she had insisted. You're 34, not married, not even dating. I'm not asking for love, just conversation. Conversation. As if that was something he needed. He glanced at the empty chair across from him, irritation tightening his jaw. The woman was clearly another social climber, another perfectly polished stranger who would smile too hard and talk too much about connections. He was already planning his exit. That was when someone pulled the chair back and sat down. Alexander looked up sharply. She wasn't what he expected. Her dress was simple, too simple for a place like this. No designer logo. No glittering jewelry. Her hair was neatly tied back, slightly messy, as if she'd rushed. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, and when they met his, she froze. "Oh," she said softly. "I'm so sorry." She stood up immediately, cheeks flushing red. "I think I made a mistake. I thought this table was." Alexander frowned. "You're not, Eleanor." Her eyebrows knitted together. "No. I'm Lily." Silence stretched between them. Lily glanced around the restaurant, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. People like Alexander belonged here. People like her didn't. "I'll go," she said quickly. "Really? I didn't mean to." "Wait." The word left Alexander's mouth before he'd thought it through. Lily paused, fingers gripping the back of the chair. "My date isn't here," he said slowly. "And you're already sitting." She hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not." That was a lie. She was already causing something. He just didn't know what yet. Reluctantly, Lily sat back down. Up close, Alexander noticed things that unsettled him. Her hands were rough, the kind that had worked too hard. There was no calculating sparkle in her eyes, no rehearsed charm. Just nervous honesty. "So," he said, folding his hands. "Lily, why did you think this table was yours?" She let out a small, embarrassed laugh. "I was supposed to meet someone here too. A job interview, actually. The manager told me to wait at a reserved table." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "And you chose the most expensive one?" "I didn't know," she admitted. "I've never been here before." That much was obvious. A waiter approached, clearly confused. "Sir, would you like to order?" Alexander glanced at Lily. She looked ready to vanish. "Yes," he said after a moment. "Bring the menu for both of us." The waiter nodded and left. Lily stared at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know." "Then why are you?" He didn't have an answer. Something about the way she spoke, without expectation, threw him off balance. Minutes passed as they looked over the menu. Lily's eyes widened at the prices. "I'll just have water," she said quickly. Alexander closed his menu. "Order what you want." "I can't afford this place." "I can." She stiffened. "I don't want charity." The word hit him harder than he expected. "This isn't charity," he said quietly. "It's dinner." She studied his face, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she nodded. "All right. But just something small." When the waiter left, an awkward silence followed. "So," Lily said, trying to fill it. "What do you do?" "I run a company." "Of course you do," she said with a smile that held no envy. Just acceptance. "And you?" he asked. "I clean offices at night. During the day, I look for better work." No shame. No self-pity. Alexander felt something shift. "Why tonight?" he asked. "An interview this late." She looked down. "It wasn't really an interview. More like a maybe. I needed the extra hours." The food arrived. Lily ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid of doing something wrong. "You don't belong here," Alexander said suddenly. She looked up, hurt flashing across her face. I know. That's not what I meant, he said. You're different. She gave a small smile. Different usually means inconvenient. He didn't deny it. As they talked, something unfamiliar crept into Alexander's chest. Lily spoke about her life openly, her sick mother, the rent she barely managed, the dreams she'd put on hold. She laughed easily, even at her own struggles. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever made him listen. When the bill came, Lily reached for her bag. No, he said firmly. I'll pay my share. You won't. She looked at him, conflicted. I don't like owing people. Then don't owe me, he replied. Just, let this be a good night. Outside, the cold air hit them. This is where we part, Lily said, forcing a cheerful tone. Alexander watched her step away, something tightening inside him. Lily. She turned. Have dinner with me again. She laughed softly. You don't even know me. I want to. Her smile faded into something more serious. People like you don't want people like me. People like me don't usually want anyone, he said. That's the problem. She hesitated, then nodded once. Okay. One more dinner. As she walked away, Alexander realized something terrifying. For the first time in years, his perfectly controlled world had shifted, and it had taken only one poor girl sitting in the wrong seat to do it. And he had no idea how deeply she was about to change his life. Alexander didn't sleep that night. He lay in his penthouse apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying Lily's laugh, the way she'd hesitated before agreeing to see him again, as if expecting the world to pull the rug out from under her at any moment. He wasn't used to thinking about people after meetings ended. People were tasks, problems, assets. Lily was none of those things, and that unsettled him more than any hostile takeover ever had. The next evening, he arrived early again, something he never did. This time, he chose a quieter restaurant, smaller, warmer. When Lily walked in, she stopped at the door, clearly unsure she was in the right place. You came, she said, surprise softening her voice. So did you. She wore the same simple coat as before, but her hair was down now, framing her face. No effort to impress. Just, her. They talked more easily this time. About nothing and everything. Childhood memories. Bad jobs. Strange customers. Alexander found himself laughing, actually laughing, at a story about Lily accidentally vacuuming up a client's cat toy and panicking for an hour. You're not what I imagined, she said at one point, stirring her tea. What did you imagine? A man who doesn't smile, she replied honestly. Someone intimidating. I am intimidating. She smiled. Not to me. The words stayed with him long after she left. Over the following weeks, dinners turned into walks. Walks turned into conversations that lasted until midnight. Lily never asked about his money, never hinted at wanting more. She listened when he spoke, challenged him when he was wrong, and looked at him like he was human, not powerful, not untouchable. Alexander hadn't realized how lonely he was until loneliness began to loosen its grip. But reality has a way of catching up. One afternoon, Lily didn't show up. Alexander waited. 10 minutes. 20. An hour. Something twisted inside him, something dangerously close to fear. When she finally called, her voice was shaking. I'm sorry. I can't come today. Are you okay? A pause. My mum collapsed. She's in hospital. He was already reaching for his coat. Which hospital? No, she said quickly. You don't need to. I want to. When he arrived, Lily looked smaller than he'd ever seen her. Tired. Frightened. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside her. That night changed something fundamental between them. From then on, Lily slowly let him into her world. The tiny flat with peeling paint. The worn sofa. The fridge that hummed too loudly. Alexander didn't comment. He didn't flinch. He just helped, quietly fixing things, bringing groceries, driving her to appointments. She tried to resist at first. Pride ran deep in her. I don't want you to feel responsible for me, she said once. I don't, he replied. I feel connected. The word felt dangerous. Real. But the deeper Alexander stepped into Lily's life, the harder it became to hide her from his own. Knight Global Holdings wasn't built on softness. His board noticed his distractions. His assistant noticed the late arrivals. And eventually, the media noticed Lily. A grainy photo appeared online. Alexander Knight leaving a hospital with an unknown woman. Speculation exploded. Who is she? New girlfriend. Another social stunt. Lily saw the headlines before Alexander could warn her. She went quiet after that. This is why people like you don't date people like me, she said one evening, holding her phone like it burned. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. They'll tear me apart, she whispered. I'm not built for your world. My world can change. Yours can, she replied. Mine can't. The distance grew, not from lack of feeling, but from fear. Alexander tried to bridge it, but Lily began canceling plans, choosing shifts over dinners, exhaustion over closeness. She was retreating to protect herself. Then came the gala. Alexander had avoided public events for years, but this one was unavoidable. When Lily refused to attend, he didn't push. But when he arrived alone, something felt wrong. Midway through the night, he spotted her. Lily stood near the service entrance, wearing a staff uniform, carrying trays. Her eyes widened when she saw him. They stared at each other across a room full of crystal chandeliers and silk gowns. After the event, he found her outside, shivering. You didn't tell me you worked here, he said quietly. You didn't ask, she replied, defensive. And I didn't want pity. This isn't pity. It feels like it, she said. Standing next to you, I disappear. You don't disappear to me. But I do to everyone else. Her voice cracked, and something in Alexander broke with it. You think money makes me powerful, he said. But you're the one who changed me. She shook her head. Change doesn't pay rent. Love doesn't stop people from judging. He stepped closer. Let them judge. She looked up at him, eyes wet. You can afford that. I can't. For the first time, Alexander had no argument. Because she was right. And standing there in the cold, watching the woman who had softened his heart pull away to protect herself, he realized the cruelest truth of all. Lily hadn't sat at the wrong table that night. She had sat at the only one that could ever matter. And now, the distance between their worlds was growing wider, not smaller, and he had no idea how to cross it without losing her completely. Alexander stood where Lily had left him, the night air biting through his tailored coat, but he barely felt it. For the first time in his life, money, influence, and power meant nothing. They couldn't buy the one thing slipping through his fingers. The days that followed were unbearable. Lily stopped answering his calls. Her messages were short, polite, distant. I'm busy. Mum needs me. I'm fine. Each word felt like another door closing. Alexander tried to drown himself in work, but meetings blurred together. Numbers lost meaning. His board noticed. You're distracted, one of them finally said during a tense meeting. This company needs focus, Alexander. He nodded, said the right words, but his mind was elsewhere, on a small hospital room, a tired woman who smiled through exhaustion, and the way she'd looked at him that night, as if loving him meant losing herself. Against his better judgment, he went to see her. Lily answered the door slowly, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it. The flat smelled faintly of soup and disinfectant. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know, he replied. But I am. She stepped aside reluctantly, letting him in. The room felt heavier than before, like all the unspoken things had settled into the walls. How's your mum? He asked. Stable, Lily said. For now. They stood there, unsure where to place their hands, their words. You're pushing me away, Alexander said quietly. I'm protecting us, she corrected. There is no us if you do this. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and her voice trembled. You think I don't feel this too? I lie awake wondering what it would be like to live without counting every penny. To not be invisible. To walk beside you without feeling like I'm borrowing a life that isn't mine. You're not borrowing anything, he said. You belong. That's easy for you to say, she replied sharply. You've never been looked down on for being poor. The word hung between them, raw and honest. Alexander swallowed. You're right. I haven't. But I know what it's like to be valued only for what you provide. To be loved conditionally. She softened at that. Just a little. I don't want to be a secret, Lily whispered. And I don't want to be a headline. Then don't be, he said. Be with me. Silence followed. Lily turned away, gripping the back of a chair. I need time. He nodded, even though every part of him resisted. I'll wait. Weeks passed. Alexander kept his distance, just as she asked. No surprise visits. No pressure. But he didn't disappear. He sent groceries anonymously. Arranged better care for her mother without attaching his name. Quiet gestures, unseen by the world. Lily noticed anyway. One evening, she found a note tucked inside a pharmacy bag. You don't owe me. Ever. Something cracked inside her. Meanwhile, the pressure on Alexander intensified. Rumors circulated at work. Investors whispered. His mother called, concerned. Is there someone in your life? She asked gently. Yes, he said without hesitation. Then don't lose her, she replied. Power is lonely. The turning point came unexpectedly. Lily was on her way home late one night when she was cornered outside her building by a journalist. Questions flew at her, sharp, invasive. How does it feel dating a billionaire? Are you using him? Were you paid to stay quiet? She froze, panic flooding her chest. Alexander arrived minutes later, having followed a strange instinct that wouldn't let him sleep. When he saw the camera lights, something in him snapped. He stepped between Lily and the journalist without hesitation. That's enough, he said, voice cold and commanding. Leave. The journalist smirked. Care to comment on your relationship, Mr. Knight? Alexander didn't even glance at the camera. He turned to Lily instead. She owes no one an explanation, he said. And neither do I. He took her hand. The gesture was simple, defiant, public. The next day, headlines exploded. But this time, Lily didn't feel alone. She sat beside Alexander in his car, staring out the window. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said. I wanted to. You know this will make things harder. For who? For me, she said softly. And for you. He reached over, squeezing her hand. I've spent my life choosing what's easy. I'm done. She looked at him, eyes shining with fear and something dangerously close to hope. Still, the road ahead wasn't smooth. Lily struggled with the attention. Strangers whispered. Online comments cut deep. She questioned herself constantly, whether she was strong enough, whether love was worth the cost. Alexander watched her wrestle with it, helpless in ways he'd never been before. One night, she finally broke down. I don't know who I am anymore, she cried. I was just Lily. Now I'm your poor girlfriend. He held her as she shook, his chest tight. Then we'll redefine it. Together. She pulled back, searching his face. What if I can't fit into your world? Then I'll build a new one, he said simply. The words terrified her. Because part of her wanted to believe him. And part of her knew that changing a life was easier than changing a world. As Lily stood at the edge of a future she never asked for, torn between love and survival, Alexander realized the truth he had been avoiding. Saving her wasn't enough. If he wanted to keep her, he would have to risk everything he'd built. And he still hadn't decided how far he was willing to go. Alexander began making changes quietly at first, the way he did with everything important. He cancelled meetings that didn't matter. He delegated decisions he once hoarded. For the first time, Knight Global Holdings wasn't consuming every breath he took. But change has a way of exposing fault lines. Lily tried to return to normal, if normal was even possible anymore. She kept her cleaning job. She still rode the bus. She still flinched when strangers stared too long. But now, when she came home exhausted, there was someone waiting who didn't see her exhaustion as weakness. Still, doubt followed her like a shadow. One evening, as they sat on the floor of her flat eating takeaway, Lily asked quietly, Do you ever wonder how long this can last? Alexander didn't pretend to misunderstand. Every day. And I choose it anyway. She smiled faintly, but her eyes were sad. I don't want to be something you choose until it's inconvenient. You're not a phase, he said firmly. She didn't argue, but the silence that followed told him she wasn't convinced. The real test came when Alexander invited her to a board dinner. Not a gala, not a spectacle, but a room full of people who shaped his world. You don't have to come, he said. I won't be angry. I don't want to hide, Lily replied. Her voice trembled, but her decision didn't. That night, she wore a simple navy dress she'd bought secondhand. She stood tall beside him, even when the room went quiet as they entered. The smiles were polite. The questions were sharp. "And what do you do, Lily?" one woman asked, eyes flicking over her like an evaluation. "I work," Lily replied calmly. "Very hard." Alexander felt pride swell in his chest. But later, in the car, Lily stared out the window, jaw tight. "They looked at me like I was temporary." "They are wrong," he said. "They always think they are right." The strain began to show in small ways. Lily grew quieter. Alexander grew more protective. Arguments surfaced, not explosive, but heavy. "You can't fix everything with money," Lily snapped once. "I'm not trying to fix," he replied. "I'm trying to support." "I didn't ask for support. I asked for respect." The words cut deep because they were true. Alexander realized then that loving Lily wasn't about rescuing her. It was about standing beside her without overshadowing her. So he did something no one expected. He stepped back. Not from her, but from the spotlight. Alexander declined interviews. He shut down gossip columns with legal warnings. He moved out of his penthouse into a quieter place, one where Lily could breathe without feeling like a guest in someone else's life. People called it a phase, a crisis, a mistake. Alexander didn't care. But Lily noticed the cost. "You're changing everything," she said one night. "For me." "For us," he corrected. "What if I can't give you something equal in return?" He took her hands gently. "You already have." Still, fear lingered. Then her mother took a turn for the worse. Hospital nights returned. Sleepless vigils. The constant hum of machines. Lily grew thin with worry. Alexander was there every night, silent and steady. No cameras. No announcements. Just presence. One evening, Lily broke down in the hallway, sobbing into his chest. "I'm so tired." "I know," he whispered. "Lean on me." She did. Days later, when her mother stabilized again, Lily realized something had shifted. She wasn't fighting him anymore. She wasn't bracing for abandonment. But just as she began to let go, life tested them again. An offer arrived. A prestigious international program, training, education, opportunity. Everything Lily had once dreamed of before survival took over. But it was abroad. 4 years. She stared at the email, heart racing. Alexander read it silently, then looked up. "You should go." The words stunned her. Just like that. "Yes. What about us? We'll figure it out." She searched his face. "You're not afraid." "I am," he admitted. "But loving you means wanting you whole, not small." Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, Lily felt seen, not as poor, not as fragile, but as someone with a future that mattered. Yet accepting the offer meant stepping even further into a world that had never made room for her. It meant distance, uncertainty, risk. That night, she lay awake beside Alexander, listening to his breathing, wondering if choosing herself meant losing him. And across the city, as dawn crept in, Alexander stared at the ceiling again, just as he had the night he met her. Only this time, the fear wasn't loneliness. It was the possibility that loving Lily might require letting her walk away, and trusting that if what they had was real, it would survive the distance. Neither of them slept. Because both of them knew. The next decision Lily made would change everything. Lily accepted the offer at sunrise. Her hands trembled as she clicked the confirmation button, tears blurring the screen. It felt selfish and terrifying and right all at once. When she told Alexander, she expected resistance, pain, maybe even anger. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and held her like he was memorizing her. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. The months that followed were the hardest of their lives. Distance stripped everything down to its core. No glamour. No protection. Just two people choosing each other every day without the comfort of touch. Time zones stole sleep. Missed calls sparked doubts. Headlines faded, replaced by silence. Lily struggled at first. She was surrounded by people who spoke confidently, dressed sharply, belonged effortlessly. Old insecurities resurfaced. There were nights she sat alone in her small room, staring at the city lights, wondering if she'd made a mistake believing she could exist in a bigger world. Alexander struggled too. He sat in meetings where his decisions were questioned more than ever. He turned down deals that didn't align with the man he was becoming. Some investors walked away. Others mocked his softness. He let them. Because every time Lily called him after a long day, voice tired but excited, telling him about what she was learning. Something inside him settled. They grew separately, and together. 1 year passed. Then 2. Lily returned home changed. Not polished. Not perfect. Strong. She walked into Alexander's life not as someone asking for space, but as someone who owned it. She had confidence now, earned the hard way. She had plans. A career that didn't rely on his name. When she stood in front of him again, suitcase at her feet, Alexander realized the truth. This was the woman he had fallen in love with all along. He just hadn't known her full shape yet. "I'm not the same person," she said softly. "Neither am I," he replied. They didn't rush back into old routines. They rebuilt, carefully, honestly. Arguments came, but they were different now. About values. About futures. About what kind of life they wanted to stand in together. And for the first time, the answers aligned. The world noticed again. When Alexander announced a radical shift in Knight Global Holdings, investing heavily in fair wages, education programs, and social mobility, people called it strategy. Others called it madness. Lily knew better. She watched him speak at a conference, calm and grounded, and understood something profound. He hadn't saved her. She had changed him. And together, they were changing something larger. Years later, on an ordinary evening, Alexander took Lily back to the first restaurant, the one with the quiet piano and the candle on the wrong table. "This is ridiculous," she laughed. "I almost ran out that night." "I almost left," he admitted. He reached into his pocket, not with a dramatic gesture, not with an audience watching, but with the same quiet certainty he'd learned from her. "I don't need you to belong to my world," he said. "I want to belong to yours." When he asked her to marry him, there were no gasps, no cameras. Just silence filled with meaning. She said yes through tears. Not because he was a CEO. Not because he was powerful. But because he had learned to love without control. Their wedding wasn't extravagant. No headlines. No spectacle. Just people who mattered, laughter that felt real, and a sense of peace neither of them had known before. Years later, when someone asked Lily how she ended up with Alexander Knight, she smiled and said, "I sat at the wrong table." But she knew the truth. There are no wrong tables. Only moments brave enough to change a life. Alexander often thought back to the man he used to be, cold, guarded, untouchable. He barely recognized him now. Love hadn't weakened him. It had given him something stronger than power. Purpose. And Lily, once invisible to the world, now stood firmly within it, not because she was chosen, but because she chose herself. Together, they proved something simple and extraordinary. That love doesn't erase differences, it bridges them. That wealth can buy comfort, but humility builds connection. And that sometimes, the most powerful transformations begin with a mistake, that was never a mistake at all. The candle at that table had long burned out. But the light it started never did.